It was just after sunrise on a cold January morning in 1997. Officers stepped into room 102 of the Best Budget Inn in Oklahoma City. Inside, they found motel owner Barry Van Treese beaten to death. No forced entry, no struggle outside the room, no sign the killer ever intended to be seen. Hi, I'm Fidelity Cross. Don't forget to subscribe. This channel will only grow if you are part of it. What began as a violent murder in a rundown motel would soon become one of the most controversial death penalty cases in modern American history, a case built almost entirely on the testimony of a single man. Best Budget Inn was one of several motels owned by Barry Van Treese. At the Oklahoma City location, day-to-day operations were handled by manager Richard Glossip. Living on site was 19-year-old handyman Justin Sneed, a kid who patched drywall, fixed heaters, and did odd jobs. According to court records, Sneed was also using methamphetamine at the time, a detail that would later become central to questions about his reliability. This was the world inside the motel: transient guests, cheap rooms, a stressed-out manager, and a teenage handyman living in room 217. In early January of 1997, Van Treese made one of his routine visits to inspect the property. He ordered a room for the night. Glossip handled the desk. Sneed drifted around the property as he always did. It was an ordinary evening. The next morning, Van Treese was not doing his morning inspections, which was his usual routine on these visits. His car was not in the spot it was the evening before. It looked as if he had just left, but someone found Van Treese's car near the motel, abandoned. Police were notified of the suspicious find and responded quickly. They found Glossip in the office. Glossip explained that Van Treese had stayed in room 102 the night before, and he thought he had just left earlier that morning. The police entered room 102. Inside, they found Van Treese's body on the floor. He had been beaten to death with a baseball bat. There were no signs of struggle in the parking lot, no witnesses, nothing to point to a motive, only the brutal reality of the crime inside that room. The investigation began immediately. Detectives questioned employees and guests. Glossip spoke with officers early, describing his movements and the events he knew. But as investigators dug deeper, their focus shifted toward Justin Sneed. Some sources report that inconsistencies about his movements and items linked to the crime drew attention. Police brought him in for questioning. At first, Sneed denied everything. He denied knowing anything about the murder. He denied being involved. He denied touching Van Treese. But then the detectives confronted him with something that changed everything. They told him that Richard Glossip was already blaming him. From that moment on, Sneed's story shifted. Over the course of the interrogation, he confessed. According to his statement, he killed Van Treese with a baseball bat inside room 102. But that wasn't all. As the interview continued, Sneed implicated Richard Glossip. He claimed Glossip asked him to do it, encouraged him, offered him money for it. And overnight, the case transformed. One man admitted to the killing, the other was accused of orchestrating it. The investigation turned sharply towards Glossip. Prosecutors charged Glossip with first-degree murder, arguing he planned the killing to protect his job. They said he feared being fired over how he managed the motel's money. To secure testimony, they offered Sneed a deal: testify against Glossip and avoid the death penalty. Sneed accepted. He received life in prison without parole. From that point forward, the state's case depended almost entirely on the word of a teenage meth user who admitted he was the one swinging the bat. At trial, prosecutors described Glossip as the mastermind, a man who didn't want to get his hands dirty, a man who manipulated a vulnerable handyman into doing the unthinkable. To the jury, the prosecution had a simple story. Sneed did the killing. Glossip made it happen. The defense argued the opposite, that no physical evidence tied Glossip to the crime. No fingerprints, no DNA, no weapon, no nothing. They argued Sneed had every reason to lie, because lying saved his life. But in the end, the jury believed the state's theory. Glossip was convicted and sentenced to death. In 2001, the conviction was overturned. The court ruled that Glossip's defense had been inadequate. But in 2004, at his retrial, the same court evidence returned, Snead's word. And once again, Richard Glossip was convicted and sentenced to die. In multiple appeals, Glossip came within hours of execution, only to receive last-minute stays. Each time, the same question resurfaced. Can a man be executed based on the testimony of the one who actually committed the murder, expressly one who avoided the death penalty by giving that testimony? By 2025, nearly 3 decades after the murder of Van Treese, Richard Glossip remained on death row. His attorneys continue to argue that his conviction was built on foundation too unstable to support the death sentence. Lawmakers continued to call for deeper review. Independent investigators continued to find problems. And the public continued to ask whether the state was willing to take a man's life based not on physical evidence, but on the word of a single witness with everything to gain. The case of Glossip remains the most scrutinized in American true crime. A case where the man who admitted the killing lives in prison, and the man he accused sits on death row. When I first started researching for this video, I had planned to do a deep dive into it, but every bit of information I read led down a rabbit hole. It would have taken a 3-hour video to lay it all out. Prosecutorial misconduct and feeding Snead ideals by the police seem to be at play. I encourage you to research the case, but be aware. You will find yourself at the bottom of a rabbit hole. Thanks for watching. I'm Fidelity Cross.